It's good to be back after a nice vacation. Now I just have to start planning another one so that I have something to look forward to. The Feast of St. Lawrence, there came a point as the church grew, as we read in the scriptures, and the apostles and those that they ordained to preach were having a very difficult time doing that and also taking care of the widows and the poor and those in need. And so they decided to make deacons, and they chose 7 men to be ordained deacons, and their primary function was to take care of the poor and those in need, and also to preach the gospel. And one of those 7 was Lawrence, whose feast we celebrate tonight. Nothing is really known about his background at all, except that in the scriptures it says he was chosen to be a deacon. He was put in charge of the treasury in Rome, and it was his responsibility to provide needs for the poor and those in need. Nothing else is much known except the most important fact, and that is that just a few days after Pope Sixtus and his companions were martyred by Valerian, Lawrence was martyred with 4 other companions and clerics. What is most noted is that he gave his life completely to Christ. The holiness of the saints is that they lived their life for the Lord, and that's just what Lawrence did. There's a couple legends accompanying his history. One is that he was burned on a gridiron, huge hot fire, and Valerian put him on that to burn him to death. One legend is that the flames danced all around him for quite a while and he never was burned. And that even after he was, there was no smell of burning flesh. And supposedly his last word was, "I'm done now, you can turn me over." What faith he must have had in the resurrection and in the life that Christ has promised to us. Another one was that before he was martyred, Valerian called him and said that, your teaching is that you should give to Caesar what belongs to him, and I need more money for my forces. And so I want you to go and get all the treasures of you Christians. He said, I know that you use gold chalices for the sacred blood and that you have silver candlesticks at your evening prayer. He said, I want you to bring me those things so I can sell them because you don't need them. The only thing God gave you was words. A good statement, actually, because God gave us the words of eternal life. So he said, well, I need some time to gather all those things. So after a couple of days, he notified the emperor he was ready. What he had done was he went out and gathered all of the blind, the crippled, the lepers, the widows, the orphans, the poor, all those who were physically in need, and he lined them all up in rows. And then he said to the emperor, that's the treasure of the church, people who suffer for Christ and offer their sufferings for Christ. Well, the emperor was so angry, that's when he actually brought about his martyrdom. So for us, the martyrdom of St. Lawrence is that we are all called to completely live our lives out of love for Christ, whatever we do every day. We may not be able to call to be martyrs like he was, but in a sense, like the gospel says, that we have to die to ourselves if we want to have eternal life. Where it says that whoever hates his life in this world will preserve it, that doesn't mean hate like we understand that word today. When we say hate, we think of something we really despise terribly. But to hate in the sense that it's used by the Hebrew people here is that you would love God more than you love anything else. So you would place first Christ and what he asks, and then everything else comes second. So they would say use the word hate, but that's not what it means as we understand it. It means that we give ourselves totally to Christ out of love for him. So that's the message we take with us today, that the Lord asks us to bear fruit in our lives, and hopefully the goodness that we show to others each day that we can is leading us to everlasting life, just like it did St. Lawrence. Let us stand and offer our petitions.